So excuse the mess, I'm in the middle of about 1,000 projects. But I just thought this was interesting. I got all three of these GPUs in the last couple of days. So this is a particularly weird little card. It's an OEM-only GTX 745. So it's a step below a GTX 750, supposedly. Actually, it's several steps below a GTX 750. This is a GTX 650. Not the TI version, the 650 version, just the regular 650 version. And this is a GTX 470. I don't know whether this is the later revision that supports DirectX 12 yet or not, but this is at least a DirectX 11 card. So, you know, I'd play Fallout 4, several modern-ish games. Won't play anything that needs Vulkan or DirectX 12, but 90% of games ever released will play on this. These are both DirectX 12 capable cards, although this one, like this one, only has feature level 11. So, but the interesting thing about all three of these cards, they're identical in performance. This one has slightly lower texture fill rates, even though it has more RAM. This has a faster type of RAM than this one does. This one requires two PCIe power connectors. This one requires one. This one requires none. This is a full dual slot card. This is a dual slot cooling solution. This is a single slot card. They're the same fucking card, essentially. This one has the most features. This one performs the same features this one does, slightly better than it. So this one's better at like in-body calculations, multi-rendering, certain things like that. This one's much better with texture fill, lighting effects, shadows. This one kind of sits right in between these two in power, even though it's an older GPU, but because of that it has less features. So I'm trying to decide which of these three cards I'm going to keep for myself, because I just want another gaming PC that is good enough to run Fallout 4 on playable settings. It doesn't even have to be good settings. 30 frames per second is all I need. I'm kind of weird as a gamer for one real simple reason. My first card was a Riva 128. My second card was a GeForce 2 MX. My third card was an MX 440. Are you starting to see the pattern here? Every time I play games on my computer, 15 to 20 frames per second. That's what I got used to. So for me, that is a playable frame rate. Yes, like I said, very weird. Most people want maximum frames. And I had a GTX 780 Ti that gave me that in every game I threw at it for a long time until it just fucking exploded. So I'm too cheap to buy a new GPU. It's really that simple. I mean, look how much shit I have. Why would I buy anything? So if I don't get it as part of my acquisition process, I don't get it. That probably the best rule I ever made for myself. If I can't find it as part of my scrapping or retro hardware pickups or Craigslist posts or whatever else, if I can't get it free or extremely cheap, I don't want it. Like I said, weird. But what's weirder is that these three cards are functionally identical. They can play the same games at the same frame rates with the same quality settings. They have the same amount of RAM. This one has slightly more, but it has a slightly slower RAM speed. So I just think it's hilarious that from generation to generation to generation, the power stays the same among certain card types, but the size just shrinks. So this is like a real-world example of Moore's Law in action. $250, $150, $60. The price halved each time that the chip came out. And the speed, in fact, did double, because we're going from high-end to mid-range to low-range. It's just kind of an interesting and very visual example of Moore's Law and how computing tends to double in speed and halve in price. Moore's Law has been broken for CPUs for quite some time. mostly because we hit the thermal limits of the various compounds we use to make CPUs. That started back in the mid-2000s with the power architecture, and is the major reason that Steve Jobs made the biggest mistake he ever made in his entire existence and switched from PowerPC to Intel. What a dipstick move, seriously. I fucking hate Intel Macs. They serve no purpose other than to be pretty overpriced PCs with a slightly better Unix-based operating system, which can easily be ported to any PC hardware with enough effort. So, yeah, that was dumb. I do, however, approve of the move to ARM that they're making now. Apple has always been the alternative, so they need to be the alternative, not some compatible fucking bullshit like they have been the last 10 years, 15 years. God damn, it's been 15 years they've been running Intel on those machines now. Honestly, I think the switch from PowerPC to Intel killed the majority of Apple's computer market share. A lot of people that used to buy Apples just don't anymore. The vast majority of the Hackintosh community was actually Apple fanboys who didn't want to buy Apple parts because they weren't PowerPC anymore. It's like, why would I spend $3,000 for a $200 motherboard? I get it. But I just find this really fascinating. These three cards have the same level of performance, the same amount of RAM, and very similar feature sets. And yet they came out a year or two apart, and the price basically halved each time. And it's just hilarious to me. Just perfect living example of Moore's Law. With all that said and done, I'm probably going to go with the GTX 745 because A, it's a single slot card, B, it's got a tiny little quiet cooler on it, and C, doesn't require any PowerPC Express rails, which means I could put it in this workstation if I really wanted to. Neither of these could go in this workstation. This one I think I might actually pop in my Mac Pro so that I can install Mojave on it. Ugh. Or, yeah, you know what, never mind, I don't give a shit about Mojave. I'm done with Apple's operating systems after High Sierra. There's no feasible reason to discontinue support for 32-bit applications on a 64-bit architecture. I have the same beef with Windows and their failure to create an emulation layer for 16-bit applications on Windows 7 and up. Again, there was no reason not to do that. In fact, you could have just ported the 16-bit subsystem from the 32-bit Windows into the SysWow interface and just have 2 layers of emulation. It's fucking 16-bit. It doesn't need a lot of horsepower. But nah, let's stop being backwards compatible. I really, really dislike that trend in computing. It's like we're going back to the late 70s, early 80s again, with everybody having their own fricking incompatible architecture and binaries and massive market segmentation so that nobody can develop any usable fucking software for the platforms. There's a reason everything unified under micro crap back in the 80s, because it unified the binaries and the architecture. The reason the PC succeeded was because software would run on every fucking PC, and the PCs that couldn't do that failed. A good example would be the Tandy 2000. It was not compatible enough. And then you look at the Tandy 1000 line of computers, perhaps the most successful PC clones that were made by anybody. In fact, brought that lovely PC Junior graphics to the world, because the PC Junior fucking failed. Ugh. I got off on a weird rant there. Anyways, I wish I had a 500 card to have a better example of this, like a 560, because the 560 is the same as the 650, which is the same as the 745, so, you know. But the 470 is the same as the 560. This makes me wonder if NVIDIA is cheating a little bit. Anyways, Oh, hey, look, the video's 10 minutes now.